Okay, so you know how we all crave those like really deep insights? You know, the kind that make you see things in a totally new light and actually help you like level up your life. Well, today we're going to explore this wild concept. The idea that life can be viewed as a video game. Not just like a video game, but actually understood through a video game lens.
Yeah, it is a pretty fascinating perspective, right? We're going to be drawing from a couple sources today,
Uh-huh.
mainly Dan Coe from YouTube,
Yeah.
and also this really interesting channel called CNEND.
Yeah, so our mission today is to kind of unpack their ideas and see what we can learn about this whole life as a game metaphor and how it can actually be like surprisingly helpful in real life. Dan Coe even mentions that it might not just be a metaphor. Who knows? Maybe we're in a simulation, right? But even if it is just a metaphor, we think it's packed with some actionable strategies that you can start using right away. So let's jump right in and maybe start with Dan Coe's take on the psychology behind it. You know, he talks about order and consciousness from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's book Flow. Have you heard of that concept? Yep.
But yeah, definitely flow.
Yeah.
That state where you're just completely absorbed in what you're doing,
Mm.
time just seems to melt away. You're not even thinking about yourself. And Coe points out that this happens when we're engaged in something meaningful, when our skills are aligned with the challenges we're facing.
Mm.
You know, he also talks about these autotelic activities, things you do purely for the enjoyment of doing them.
Mhm.
It's like being totally immersed in a level of video game,
Mhm.
right? Understanding flow shows us that the key to a fulfilling life is to match our abilities to the obstacles we encounter in our life game.
Right. It's that feeling of being totally in the zone. I think we've all felt it at some point, and Coe suggests that to really make life fulfilling, we need to be focusing our energy on the things that we find meaningful. And he actually says that a lot of times figuring out what's meaningful comes from experimenting and seeing what doesn't resonate with you. It's like trying different strategies in a game to see what works best, right?
Absolutely. And what's really interesting is his idea of psychic entropy, which is basically what happens when our minds are not focused on something meaningful. It's that feeling of your mind racing with worries and anxieties, just kind of scattered energy, you know? And he explains how negative thoughts can actually create these punctures that just let in more negativity. It's like a downward spiral.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like when you get caught in a loop of worrying about one thing and then it triggers a bunch of other worries, it's like a chain reaction. But he gives us a pretty cool tool to fight back against that, doesn't he? This idea of zooming out to gain perspective and then zooming back in to refocus.
It's like hitting pause in a game to look at the map before diving back into the action. By stepping back, we could detach from the immediate chaos and then re-engage with renewed purpose. And when it comes to video games, Go says they actually encourage this ordered consciousness. Think about it. They have tutorials,
Hmm.
gradual difficulty increases, and that constant balance between skill and challenge.
Yeah, that balance is key. He even shows a graphic where too much challenge leads to stress and too little leads to boredom. The best games keep you right in that sweet spot of flow, right? And then there's the idea of learning the rules of the game, whether it's an actual video game or a new situation in life, and then leveling up your skills, which triggers that dopamine, hit that feeling of reward.
Yeah, it's like your brain is telling you, hey, you're doing great, keep going, which is so motivating. Now, let's switch gears a bit. Dan Coe also gets into some pretty deep metaphysical stuff. He brings up Donald Hoffman's theory from The Case Against Reality, and this is where things get really mind-bending.
This was a huge aha moment for me. So Hoffman basically argues that what we perceive as reality might not actually be the true nature of things. It's more like a user interface designed for our survival.
Right, it's like we're only seeing what we need to see to navigate this game of life and avoid getting game over. Natural selection favors what helps us survive, not necessarily what shows us the ultimate truth. Right? Coe even brings up Terence McKenna's idea that language itself could be seen as a kind of virtual reality, and that our everyday perception is like a closed system.
So Hoffman's saying that even space and time might just be tools that our minds use to simplify something far more complex, and that our subjective reality is like a screen with icons that represent objects, and our actions lead to fitness payoffs, like points in a game. It's wild.
It really makes you think what's even more interesting is the analogy he uses about different organisms having completely different perceptual experiences. You know,
Yeah.
like a frog sees a completely different spectrum of colors than we do.
Right. It's like we're all playing different versions of the same game with different settings and rules based on what helps us survive in our own niche. And just like we don't need to see the code of a video game to play it. Hoffman suggests that the underlying code of reality is probably way beyond our comprehension and, more importantly, not necessary for us to thrive in this game.
And Coe points out that if we were to somehow remove that user interface, like through psychedelics or something, it could be really overwhelming, even detrimental to our survival in this game.
Yeah, it's like trying to play a complex game without any controls or information on the screen. So he
No.
uses this analogy of the mind as a vessel, consciousness as the light, and perception as the film that shapes our experience. Okay, so that was the really mind-bending stuff. But let's move on to Sanan's perspective on the Matrix, which feels a bit more grounded in our everyday lives.
So Sanan uses this beautiful metaphor of life as a serene lake, but with a distorted surface. And he says those distortions represent the illusions of the Matrix.
Yeah, and he's not talking about some sci-fi conspiracy. He's talking about this constant barrage of messages like billboards and phone notifications and news headlines that shape our thoughts, our desires, even our fears.
Exactly. It's like this invisible web that's constantly influencing us. And he points out that philosophers throughout history have been talking about this illusory nature of perception for centuries.
Right. And in today's world, Sanan identifies those illusions as things like social norms, media manipulation, and cultural pressures that tell us how we should live and what we should value. So the first step to breaking free is to simply become aware of these influences, to see the matrix for what it is.
It's about recognizing the forces that are shaping our gameplay. And Sanan actually offers a path for escaping this matrix. And it starts with something very simple, rediscovering nature.
Yeah, he talks about how the natural world, with its organic forms and rhythms, offers a stark contrast to the artificiality of the matrix. Just being in nature, feeling the earth beneath your feet, breathing fresh air can bring a sense of peace and connection that's often missing in our screen-filled lives.
It's like a recalibration of our senses, a reminder that there's more to life than the digital noise and the pressures of the matrix.
And then Sanan talks about the importance of embracing authenticity, being true to yourself, regardless of what society expects you to be.
Right? He talks about how we often suppress our true thoughts or change our appearance to fit in, and how that actually gives the matrix more power over us.
He even quotes Nietzsche saying, the individual has always had a struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. Which is so true. It takes courage to break free and forge your own path in this life game.
And when we embrace our true selves and follow our own passions, we not only liberate ourselves, but we also inspire others to do the same.
Then Sanan talks about intellectual liberation, which is all about developing critical thinking skills and a strong sense of self-worth. It's about questioning why things are the way they are, instead of just accepting them blindly.
He uses this example of someone stuck in a soul-crushing job, which forces them to reevaluate their values and search for something more fulfilling.
It's that feeling of discomfort that pushes you to question the status quo and start writing your own story. And finally, Sanan talks about tuning into higher emotional frequencies.
Yeah, he explains how lower vibrational emotions like fear and anger keep us trapped in the matrix, while higher frequencies like love, joy, and peace connect us to something bigger than ourselves.
He suggests practical things like choosing positive activities and nurturing supportive relationships to basically reprogram our daily experience for more joy and growth. So it's about recognizing that we are not just physical beings, but also spiritual beings with so much potential.
It's about tapping into that higher potential.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered some pretty deep psychological and metaphysical stuff. Now let's get back to Dan Coe and his more practical self-help perspective, which really brings this life as a video game analogy down to earth.
Right. So Ko uses this framework to encourage us to stack gold, to build up our resources, our skills, and our experiences so we can unlock new levels of personal growth. And he acknowledges that there are obviously differences between a video game and real life, but the core principles are very similar.
Right. He draws these parallels, like video game tutorials being like childhood learning different professions, being like character classes, life's challenges being like quests, and the unknown future being like unexplored territory in a game.
Yeah, it's all about recognizing those patterns. And once we do, he says we can start to correct our behavior to move towards the outcomes we want. He even quotes Einstein saying, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them, so we need to evolve our mindsets.
He talks about raising our level of consciousness by expanding our perspective, identifying problems, learning new skills, and transcending our old beliefs.
And he says each new level unlocks opportunities that are just slightly beyond our current capabilities. So it's like a constant cycle of growth. And he stresses how important it is to avoid distractions and not underestimate our own potential.
And this leads into his concept of creating your own games. He says that just like video games have a desired outcome, a path for progression and habitual actions, we can design our lives in the same way.
It's all about having a clear purpose, a process, and a system of priorities.
And without those three things, you're likely to flounder. He even suggests creating a hierarchy of goals, a 10-year vision, yearly goals, monthly targets, and weekly actions to keep us moving in the right direction.
Yeah, it's like a roadmap, but it's not set in stone. It's there to guide us. And he also points out that when we focus too much on the negative, it's often because we don't have enough positive and engaging responsibilities to fill our time and energy.
Right. And ultimately, all change comes down to changing our behavior. So we need a plan and systems to actually make those changes happen.
It's about attacking our goals, embracing trial and error, doubling down on what works, and never giving up.
Persistence is key, right?
Mm.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground with Coe's psychological, metaphysical, and self-help perspectives. Now, let's dive into his take on business, especially in the context of the digital age and the creator economy.
This is where things get really interesting. So, Coe talks about this power shift away from corporations and towards individuals, which has been accelerated by technology.
Yeah, thinkers like Naval Ravikant have been talking about this, and Coe connects it to these natural principles of division and unity and entropy. Things are always changing, right?
He compares it to the Renaissance era where multifaceted individuals thrived. And he says we're in a kind of digital renaissance now with this unprecedented access to information and global connection.
Yeah, the internet has expanded our possibilities in ways we could never have imagined before.
Right. And he defines the creator economy as the space where your personal brand becomes your character. Your online business is your game. Your network is your tribe. Creating products is how you make a living. And your philosophy is your marketing edge.
It's a really empowering concept, you know?
Yeah. And he asks this really important question. Are we actively creating and contributing value, or are we just passively consuming? It's about being an active participant in the game.
Okay.
And he even frames business as a kind of spiritual endeavor, a way to contribute to humanity and train your own spirit.
I love that. And then he goes into this one-person business model, which is becoming more and more viable in the digital age.
Yeah, he has this graphic where he shows how your goals inform your brand. The problems you've solved become your content. The systems you've created become your products. And the benefits you offer become your marketing.
It's a really clear framework for how to build a sustainable business around your unique strengths. And he quotes Alan Watts saying, sensible people get paid for doing what they enjoy doing, which is the dream.
Absolutely. So let's break down those components of a one-person business. Your brand is essentially it's your unique identity online.
And strong brands have a clear vision that resonates with people. It's about being authentic and showing up as your best self online.
Then there's content, which comes from the lessons you've learned and the insights you've gained along your journey.
Coe emphasizes writing as a tool for self-awareness. And he says the best content comes from your genuine excitement and the things you're passionate about.
Then your product, which is basically the solution you're offering to a specific problem.
And he encourages us to focus on creating products that genuinely help people make their lives better. Whether it's in their health, wealth, relationships, or happiness.
He addresses that hesitation people have about starting a real business by saying that it's about solving real problems that make a positive impact.
Exactly. And then there's marketing, which is all about getting your message out there and connecting with your audience.
And he stresses the importance of studying marketing principles and using your personal philosophy, your why, to connect with people on a deeper level.
It's about authenticity and sharing your story so you can see how all these aspects of a business are interconnected, and they all stem from pursuing your goals and sharing your unique value with the world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's safe to say that viewing life through the lens of a video game can offer some really valuable insights. It's not about escaping reality, but understanding the structures and the potential for growth that exist in both virtual and real life.
Take a moment to think about which of these perspectives resonated with you the most and how you might apply those ideas to your own life.
Yeah. And here's a final thought for you to consider. Think about an area of your life where you feel stuck or maybe even a little lost. How might reframing that area as a game with levels and skills change your approach?
Maybe it's time to identify your current level in that game and start figuring out how you can level up.
Exactly. It's all about navigating this amazing and complex game of life with more awareness and purpose.
And who knows, maybe we'll discover some cheat codes along the way.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us.
Take care.
Bye.